Hey everyone, Russ Thornton here, your host of Women's Retirement Radio. Today, I'm excited to welcome Jason Levoy to the show. Jason is also known as the Divorce Resource Guy, which I look forward to having him share more about here as we talk today. So, Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Russ. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, like I said, really excited to have you join us today. Why don't we start by you just telling folks a little bit about who you are and what it is you do.
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate it. So again, my name is Jason Levoy. I'm a former divorce attorney turned divorce coach. That's what I do now. I don't represent people directly in their divorces. I only serve as a coach. And I did that because I felt like I could serve a greater number of people in a better way than I was as a divorce attorney. Basically, and if you want the whole boring story about, why I quit being a divorce attorney, you can, check me out, listen to my podcast. I explain it, I think, in the first episode, or probably a lot of times. But I wasn't helping people the way I originally intended to when I became an attorney and I went to law school. And so while I was practicing, though, I did come up with what I feel is like, the secret sauce. And that is how I coach people. And so what I do is I coach people from an attorney's point of view because I am one and I did it. And so I feel that really provides a great benefit to people who are looking for help.
And out of curiosity, how many years were you a practicing family law attorney, Jason?
About 5 years.
And how long have you been doing the divorce coaching?
About 5 years.
I didn't know that, but that's kind of interesting. So looking back, now that you have the benefit of both serving as an attorney in the divorce process and more recently as a coach in the divorce process, what, without getting into the nitty gritty details, like at least at a high level, like what are the differences? Like what differences stick out to you in your mind, having served as both an attorney representing people in their divorce and now working in more of a coach's role to work with clients and maybe work with their attorney if they've hired representation?
I do that. Yeah. Originally, when I became a coach, it was with the idea of helping people who didn't have attorneys or couldn't afford attorneys and teach them and coach them how to represent themselves. But what I found actually is that the majority of clients that I work with and coach they have attorneys. And part of what I do as a coach is I actually, if they don't, when they meet me, I help them find the right attorney for their situation, because not every attorney is the same, right? And, not every divorce requires the same type of attorney. And so if you make the wrong choice and you pick the wrong attorney for your situation, that could be a very costly and time consuming mistake. So that's one of the things that I found out I do very frequently as a coach that I didn't necessarily think I was going to do when I became a coach. But the biggest difference, frankly, is I don't give legal advice, and I'm using air quotes when I say that, when I'm a coach, because I can't. There's ethical rules that I still have to adhere to because I am an attorney. And so unless you're in New Jersey, I can't give you legal advice. But what I do is I coach from I coach on the generalities of the divorce process, because no matter where you're getting divorced, you're going through the same things. If you have children, you're dealing with parenting time and custody issues. If you have alimony, you have to deal with that. You're dealing with the emotional roller coaster of going through the divorce process. So that's what I focus on as a coach. And so that would be the biggest difference, is that I can't give you legal advice. And so I defer on certain things to their attorney, assuming that they have one. And I could help them, guide them to what, I think the answer is to their question. But otherwise, if it's a state specific issue, then I defer that. But other than that, the main difference from being an attorney, a practicing divorce attorney, and a divorce coach is, and this is maybe seem obvious too, is that I don't go to court with people. I don't file papers on behalf of people like I would as an attorney. I can help them, if they have to file a motion and they're representing themselves, I can help them come up with the format, or, tell them kind of, work on the content with them, but I won't draft it for them. I don't do that, but I will help them draft it, and help them get through the process. And, so those are the main differences between being a practicing attorney and being a coach. As a coach, I can help so many more people because I coach people all over the country.
Well, I was going to ask, I know you mentioned you're based in Jersey, but it sounds like you work with people wherever they are, regardless of their jurisdiction or location. So it sounds like geography is not an obstacle for you.
That's the benefit. That's the benefit of being a coach.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but kind of reading between the lines, hearing you describe it, it sounds to me, and maybe I'm off base here, but it sounds to me like you maybe find the coaching work a little bit more rewarding or fulfilling than maybe having served in just the legal role. Is that fair?
Does it come off that blatantly? Because that's absolutely true. And listen, that's why I quit. I mean, I chose to quit being a divorce attorney. I could probably, frankly, be making, more money as a divorce attorney, which is why you don't see many attorneys doing the coaching. But I felt and I saw the need for the coaching, and the passion is what drives me. And like anything in life, I always, and I have a 7-year-old daughter, and so I want to be a good role model and say, go and do what you love to do, for a career, and follow your passion. And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm not looking back, and I have no regrets, because I can see the results that happen when I work with my clients. And, it's almost, I won't say instantaneous, but within like 1 or 2 sessions of working with a new client, I almost always get I am so glad I found you, and I already feel better about what's going on. And that's because what I do as a coach is I manage you, you as the client, and I manage your expectations, your emotions. I make sure you're prepared for whatever's coming ahead in the process. It's all about empowering you with, the information and the knowledge so you can make the best decisions. And people who have attorneys, more often than not, they don't feel that way. And there's a reason for that. And that's basically because the attorneys, charge at an hourly rate. And if they took the time to do what I do, it would be, thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. And they don't have that time, and the clients don't have the money to pay. So what I do is I'm that interim filler, I guess you could call it. And I am giving them basically all my knowledge as a divorce attorney, so that when they speak with their attorney, they are way ahead of the game and, understand what's coming and what's going on. And so in essence, they're not bothering their attorney with all the, I would say, little things that their attorneys don't really want to focus on anyway, because they want to focus on the legal aspect and representing them. But I do that. And so it creates a full picture. And it's just, it works. That's all I can say is that it works.
Well, hearing you describe it that way, I mean, I think that kind of speaks to a comment you made earlier about maybe your initial expectation was to work with people that were representing themselves. But it sounds like now that you have found an opportunity to work with clients that have their own attorney, and you can help kind of round out their divorce team, if you will, to kind of fill in the gaps where, a divorce attorney is, focused on hourly billings, things like that, where you can be a little bit more, maybe go a little bit more in depth with people into the, kind of the details that might otherwise kind of just get glossed over by most attorneys. Is that a fair characterization?
Sort of. And I'll put it like this. So as a coach, I charge all my coaching services are flat fee based, right? And I do that purposely because I don't want to be, another member on your divorce team that charges at an hourly rate. Let the attorneys do that. That's how it works. And that's fine. It's, the nature of the business. But, what you said is so true about I'm a member of the divorce team. And so that team, I call it, the 3 pillars of the team are the trifecta of awesomeness. And I talk about that more, and I think it's episode number 13 of my podcast. So you can check that out if you're listening to this. But basically, the 3 pillars are an attorney, a coach, and a therapist, right? And you could have more people or, less people, but those are like the 3 ideal bedrock people to form your divorce team. Basically, you want objective professionals who are not family and friends. Family and friends have their place, but you need objective professionals to help guide you. And so basically, it is a team approach. And when I first became a divorce coach, I didn't have that picture yet. I didn't see how that was going to fall into place, because again, I was going to I was going to coach people who are representing themselves. But what quickly has turned into what I do now, as far as forming your divorce team, is that I encourage everybody to get an attorney, assuming that they can afford one. Because can you represent yourself? You can. Should you? Well, that's a different question. It's really difficult. It takes a really specific type of personality and person to be able to do that well. And, I could count on less than my 5 fingers on one hand, the people that I've met in my lifetime who I thought could do that. So as a coach, what I do is I always encourage people to get an attorney if it's a contested situation. And that's what I do, as I help them find the right attorney if they don't have one yet.
Interesting. Yeah, the team thing just kind of jumped out to me. So I'm glad to hear you kind of explain it in those terms, and acknowledge the role of a therapist as well in many situations, whether for the person or for their maybe children or both.
You have to, because it's you get a therapist not because you're crazy, but because you're going through a divorce, and so it's one of the most traumatic times in your life, and every person on your team, your divorce team, wears a different hat. And what you should do is, as the client, is let them do whatever it is the hat they are wearing requires them to do. So what does that mean real quick? It just means your attorney should be focusing on the legal aspects of the divorce. Your attorney's not a therapist, and they don't want to be your therapist. That's why they have therapists. So that your therapist is going to help manage your emotions, and that whole side of the equation, which is just as important as the legal side, to be honest with you. So, but you gotta manage it the right way and have the right people to help you do that. So everybody has to wear that hat, and then everybody does their own thing, kind of stays in their lane, and that is the most efficient. And even though you're dealing with more people and paying more people, it is in the long run the cheapest way to do it too, because if you use your attorney for everything, I don't probably have to tell, a lot of people who have attorneys that, when you get the bill every month, you're like, what the hell's going on? Because half of it's probably non-legal related stuff that you're bothering them with. So, you got to have the right people doing the right things.
Well, and I appreciate, I think you kind of started to explain the role of the attorney and the therapist in the divorce team. And to use your terminology, I think you said, consider those the bedrock members of a divorce team. So as you round out that team as a coach, what is your role? So, or put another way, what's the biggest challenge that you are helping people address or solve as their coach during the divorce process?
So there's a lot of people out there who call themselves coaches, and that's fine. But what separates me from other people who call themselves divorce coaches is that as an attorney, I coach from an attorney's point of view. So again, while I'm not giving legal advice, it's almost like you have 2 attorneys on your team, even though I'm wearing my coach's hat. And so if they're not sure, if their attorney is doing the right thing, or they're not sure what the strategy is, as an attorney, I can help them identify that. And I help manage, for example, their relationship with their attorney, because it amazes me, Russ, how often people are stressing out about their own attorney. You're going through a contested divorce, that's hard enough. And you're dealing with, your ex and their attorney, and you're stressing out about your own attorney. You shouldn't be doing that. And so I help manage, that relationship. And I even tell them, give them questions that they should be asking their attorney to help streamline it so they can get the answers that they need. And if there's, an issue that needs to be brought up, I will help them and tell them how to approach it in the best way possible. And so I look at myself as a coach, kind of as a general contractor, and I'm helping the whole process kind of run as smoothly as possible. And I think I said it before, but if not, like, a contested divorce is a roller coaster. You're going to have your shares of ups and downs. So you gotta be able to manage that. And so that's what I do. I help manage that, and I help keep you focused as the client, and I help you form a strategy and a plan, because if you don't have that, how can you possibly make the best decisions? If you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off and just, reacting day to day to the things, then you're not going to get where you need to be when the divorce is over. And one day, even as bad as it may be, it will be over. And so, part of what I do as a coach is I help people articulate their post-divorce life. What do you want it to be? And then we form a strategy on how you're going to get there. And then everything you do is taking a step in the direction to hopefully get you there. And so I don't know if that really answered the question really good, but that's kind of how I feel as a coach, is that I'm helping you manage all the other members of your divorce team. I'm helping you manage, what's going on, with your family and your friends. So there is a little bit of therapy, a therapy component involved in being a coach. But then I also can shed light and help guide them on, what is going on the legal side of things, and understanding that process, so they don't have to bother their attorney and they're not getting billed every time they do.
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation. And it's funny, Jason, you kind of use the general contractor to kind of describe what you do. Before you even mentioned that, I was kind of picturing you as like a project manager, like kind of making sure that, everybody's kind of flying in the same formation, if you will, and moving the ball forward, which I think is super helpful, especially as you mentioned, somebody's going through a divorce, their life's getting turned upside down. And people don't know what they don't know. Right. So I think having you to serve as an experienced guide, but both from the perspective of a former practicing divorce attorney, and now as a coach, to just kind of help them make more informed decisions and use their time and energy more productively, I think it's got to be super huge. And I would imagine that ultimately saves them a lot of money in billable hours, because they're using their time more efficiently when they are engaging with their attorney.
Well, that's the thing, is that, when people hear, oh, you want me to have, 2, 3, 4 people on my divorce team and paying 2, 3, 4 people, it doesn't sound very attractive, right? But in the long run, and divorces unfortunately can take, a year or two, or God forbid more. But in the long run, you will spend less money if you have the right team supporting you, because you are going to be more efficient with your time and your resources. And that's just the way it works out. It's like one of the added benefits. It's a huge benefit. And, it is, it's just a roller coaster of a ride. And so, right, project manager, general contractor. I never thought of myself as a general contractor, but that's kind of what I do, is I help you stay on track. I make sure that we have a plan. And it's one of those things that, when I was an attorney, practicing divorce law, that I didn't even know coaches existed. I mean, I don't think they really did at that point. I think it's still kind of new, right? This whole coach thing. But it's one of those things that you don't know what you're missing until you have it, kind of like what you said, And so that's why when I work with clients, especially doing one-on-one coaching, I do group coaching and I do one-on-one, but especially with my one-on-one clients, like, they see the benefit almost immediately, within the first couple of sessions working with me. And it's, I've gotten multiple occasions, oh my God, like, how would I ever go through this without you? And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, but I'm just saying that because you don't know what you're missing until you have it. And that goes for a lot of things in life, I think. But, it's just knowing that kind of help exists, and, reaching out and taking action.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's perfectly okay to pat yourself on the back here. That's awesome that you're getting that feedback, but even more impressive that you're getting it so early, like in a first or second session. I think that speaks volumes about the value that you're delivering early in your coaching with clients, either one-on-one or in groups. So I think that's fantastic. So Jason, clearly you've got the skills and the experience to work with, I would imagine, a wide range of different types of people in different situations. But if you had to describe like a perfect client for you, like for your coaching, for your services, like, is there such a thing? Like, is there kind of a situation where you're ideally suited to get involved and help out?
That's a great question, Russ. But I mean, so I work with people in all stages of divorce, preparation, in the middle of it, towards the end of it, or even, the divorce may be over, but you're still dealing with some issues and you have to, go to court or mediation or something like that. So, whatever your stages of divorce, I can work with you. But if I had my choice, I would, have people contact me before anything really happens formally. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like before anything is filed with the court, before maybe even you tell your spouse that you want a divorce, or, sometimes you're on the other end of that and your spouse is telling you that they want a divorce. But before anything really starts, because in my opinion, preparation is the most important phase. And if you have the time and you take the time to prepare properly, that sets the tone and the foundation for the whole process. And so, I love to get in, as early as possible and start helping people prepare for divorce. And again, that could be from, let's find the right attorney for you. Let's make sure you get all your ducks in a row. And I work with you and we've come up with a plan and that strategy I mentioned before. And that for me is the best, because then, you're starting with like a clean slate. Like I pretend I'm an artist and we have a clean canvas, and then we will paint the picture from the beginning.
And with that in mind, I mean, given the opportunity to get involved early, clearly there's more value that you can add. There's mistakes you can help people avoid. What, in your experience, Jason, what's one or two of like the biggest or most widely held misunderstandings or myths about divorce? Like, for example, like I've talked to a lot of people in my experience that have said things like, "Oh yeah, I really want an attorney that's going to be a bulldog and is really going to fight tooth and nail for whatever I need." I've often heard people say, "Well, yeah, my friend or my neighbor hired this attorney and they did this, and this, and so as a result, I need to do this, and this," which is often almost always a recipe for disaster. But what, in your experience, what are one or two just kind of myths that you'd like to bust around divorce or widely held misunderstandings?
Okay, that's a great question too. And I second everything you just said. A divorce is like a snowflake, right? There's no two alike. So that's why I always say, never listen to friends and family about what happened in their divorce, trying to give you advice. It's not the same. And you got to treat your situation as unique, because it is unique and it's your life, and the factors and circumstances of you and in your life are different. No matter how similar they may look on paper to somebody else, it's different. So that's a huge, I don't know if it's a myth, but like, don't listen to friends and family. Like, use them for emotional support, but understand that it's not objective. So what I would say, a big myth of divorce is that, you can control how fast it goes. That's true, but depending, it's a big asterisk there. If you're going through the court, and that's what we call litigation, when you go through the court system, it's slow. There's just no way around it. It's slow. And, the court wants you to get divorced usually within a year, most places. That rarely happens. And now with COVID and, the courts were shut down for most of the last year and a half, and they're doing virtual hearings now. It's just, everything is slower. So you got to give it some time, and that's why going through the court system and litigating it is not the ideal way to get through the divorce. Sometimes you don't have a choice, but sometimes you do. And so that's one of the things I do as a coach, as I guide you through making those decisions. But, people want, and I get it, you want to get divorced yesterday, but it doesn't happen. And you gotta, that's why you have to take time to prepare and, be ready for whatever comes your way. And so you'll be able to manage that. So that's a big myth. And then the other, let me see, another one I would say is, I don't know, like, let me think about this for a second. There's a lot of things that can be talked about. Maybe that, it has to be expensive. That's not true. It all depends on your, spouse that you're dealing with, and, the attorneys. You mentioned this before, Russ, about getting a bulldog attorney. That's a good myth too, is that most of the time you don't need that type of an attorney. And that's what I said about how important it is about choosing the right attorney. If you choose a pit bull of an attorney, for example, when you don't need one, well, then you're going to be paying, up the wazoo, and it's going to take you a lot longer to get where you need to go, because pit bull attorneys like to litigate and fight about everything, and your divorce may not require that. And so that's why it's so important to choose the right attorney for your situation. And that goes for your spouse too, which is, part of the problem is that if they go out and hire a pit bull attorney, then, it could derail the process too. So I'll give you just a quick example. And if I'm going astray, just shut me up.
No, you're great.
I have a tendency to do that. So I'm working with a client right now, and we're in the preparation phase, right? And so she hasn't even told her spouse that she wants a divorce yet. But so I'm helping her find the right attorney for her, but then I'm also kind of helping her, depending on how her spouse reacts when she tells him that this is really going to happen, that he should try to find a similar attorney that she is looking at. In other words, I'm not steering her towards the pit bull of an attorney, because her divorce doesn't require that, in my opinion. And, so when she breaks the news that this is actually going to happen, and she wants a divorce, he's going to go through a lot of emotions, anger being one of them. But I'm prepping her to try to communicate, because she does have some level of communication with him, that, listen, we're getting divorced. It is what it is, but it doesn't have to be a drag them out, knock them out, expensive battle, right? I want an attorney. I think you should have an attorney, but we should both kind of get a similar type of attorney who can work well together, who wants to do this amicably, and that will benefit both of us, right? And then hopefully he'll agree to that, and see the benefit in that. But so that's one of the things that I do as a coach. And but it doesn't have to be a divorce. Getting back to that original point, is that it doesn't have to be a knock them out, drag them out battle, most of the time. Now, sometimes you don't have a choice, but you want to start off giving yourself the best chance to succeed, right? And get it done as quickly and cheaply as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that example. And in fact, I was going to ask you, so you kind of gave me a really nice segue.
I'm good like that.
Yeah, you are good like that, Jason. Could you share like a favorite client success story that you've worked with?
Well,
just at a high level.
Yeah. It's kind of this overarching theme of just, I'm not sure how to articulate this other than, my greatest success, any success story, as far as I'm concerned, when going through a divorce, and especially serving as a coach, is not really dependent on the outcome of the divorce, meaning who got what, for how long and how much. Like, that is important, don't get me wrong, but what's more important is how you got through the process and how you came out on the other end, emotionally, mentally, and then the last bit of that is, are you in a good place, to move on and live the life that you want to. So I'm always just a proponent of fair, right? I'm not the coach. If you want to draw blood and, just hurt your spouse because of what happened in the past, I'm not going to help you do that. That's not what I do as a coach, right? I'm about fairness, doing this as quickly, as fairly as possible to get you to move on and live the life that you deserve and be happy. And everybody at the end of the day just deserves to be happy. So, my success stories are seeing people going through the process and feeling empowered, and you see the confidence in them as things unravel. And so I guess one example of that is I prepped a client of mine recently for a hearing that they had to do in court with the judge, and she has an attorney. And, it's a nasty situation with her and her spouse or ex. And so I prepped her for what they're going to do. Not because I have a crystal ball, but, I knew they were going to hit below the belt and, mudsling and just nasty stuff like that. And so by prepping her properly and empowering her with the confidence, that she can get through this and not to, kind of fight fire with fire. That's one of the things I do as a coach is I always preach, it's not an eye for an eye, even though that's what you want to do, because that's human nature sometimes is to feel that way. But from a legal standpoint and just a coaching standpoint, that's more often than not the way to go. And so, I prepped her, I set her expectations, and she was confident going into it. And, she had prepped accordingly with her attorney. So she was confident in what her attorney was going to do or not do. And after the hearing, it went just like everybody thought it was. But, she came out on top in the sense that the judge, yelled at the other side because, of the shenanigans. And, judges are people like you and me, and they're just trying to get through the business of the divorce. The divorce really, at the end of the day, is a business transaction. It's the emotional stuff that gets in the way. And so helping clients manage that and then seeing what I'm preaching happen, and kind of play out the way I thought it might play out makes them feel good about the situation, makes them feel good about having me on their team. And, there were no big surprises. So, they are prepared to now go to the next step. And it's just like I said, keeping the ball moving forward. So that's a really long-winded way of saying, I guess, my success stories are, people understanding and seeing the benefit of having me on their team as a coach. And how I can bring down the stress levels and make the process, I guess, much more palatable than, it really is.
Well, I think that's super helpful, actually, because I think it's one thing for us to talk kind of in the abstract about what a coach is and how they help. But I think maybe providing some more kind of practical, real world, examples of, how you've helped, where you've helped, I think will give our listeners a little bit more to grab onto to, maybe identify like, oh, maybe I or someone I know could use Jason's help. So I appreciate you sharing that. You've built this brand for yourself, for lack of a better word, as the divorce resource guy. You've got a podcast by the same name. And I'm curious, just through the podcasting experience specifically, since we're kind of talking in the podcast format right now, what have you found most interesting or have you learned through the podcast since I've listened to several episodes of your podcast, and I know you've had a variety of really interesting guests and subject matter experts and things like that. So what have you found most interesting or most kind of eye-opening going through the Divorce Resource Guy podcast experience?
Well, for me, it's like I love doing the podcast because it enables me to talk to people like you and meet so many people that I would really have never have met. And I used to do a lot of writing, for like online publications and writing divorce articles. And I enjoy that. Writing is kind of my background. But then it was getting a little stale, and I was looking for a change. And then the whole podcasting thing kind of came about, and it really it invigorated me because, when we're talking to people like we're talking to each other right now, it enables our personalities to come out a little bit. The way you say something, your tone, your inflection, adds so much more to the conversation than reading print, in my opinion. And, I can, add, put a little bit of my sense of humor into my podcast, which I try to do. I don't know if it comes off so well, but I try. And, it's just, I love the format, and you can listen to it anywhere you are, in the gym, in the car. And I just think it's a great resource. And that's why I started mine. And that's why it's called the Divorce Resource Guide podcast, because it's just another resource that I want people to have where they could really learn a lot about the process and, start, empowering themselves with the information that they need to know.
Yeah. Well, I also think it's another great resource, pun intended, for people to kind of get to know you before. So maybe they listen to this conversation, you and I talking, and they're like, wow, I might be headed to towards divorce. Maybe I could use the help of someone like Jason, but you're not ready to pick up the phone or send an email. Listen to some episodes of his podcast. That's a great way to kind of get to know who he is as a person, kind of get a better understanding of how he thinks about or tackles different things or decisions. It's just, I think, a great way for people to, warm up to the idea of potentially working with you before, having to pick up the phone or, sending an email. So I think it's a great opportunity for folks to get to know who you are and understand what you do a little bit better. So be sure, if you're listening, be sure to check out Jason's podcast. It's the Divorce Resource Guy podcast, which you can find virtually everywhere. And we'll be sure to include a link to his podcast in the show notes as well.
No, I appreciate that, Russ. And I had you on my podcast, so you can listen to my conversation with Russ and as one of the episodes. And, I never thought of it like that, but that's a great way to kind of frame it, I think, is that if you're kind of shy or you're not sure, I'm the right person you want to work with or to be on your team, and this goes for any professional you're considering, listening to the podcast, like, that's me, right? And so I am the same person as your coach as you hear on the podcast. It's not like I have a different personality, and I'm not that talented. And so, like, what you see is what you get, or what you hear is what you get. And so that's a great way to kind of get a feel for somebody. And now that I think about it, I've had so many people find me by listening to me on not necessarily my podcast, but, me being on other people's podcasts like yours. And, they're like, oh, he sounds like a person that I would enjoy working with, or that would be good for my situation. And I never really connected the dots to that. But yeah, that's a great way for somebody to get a feel for, who somebody is.
Yeah, well, it's maybe top of mind because I kid you not even a half hour ago, I got an email from a local family law attorney here in Atlanta who I had on my podcast a couple months ago. And she emailed just to say, hey, and she's like, oh, by the way, I just met with a client who said they listened to our podcast conversation prior to scheduling a consult. So it's just interesting how, people, like you said, kind of connect the dots and how, they each find their own path to reach out to us. So, but yeah, definitely check out Jason's podcast. He's doing great work and putting a lot of great educational content out there for folks. Jason, it's my understanding you work with women or men. You're not, really focused on one gender or the other. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, I work with, just the way the chips fall, I work with more women than men. But I work with anybody. If you're looking for help, I'm available.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is, as you know, this is Women's Retirement Radio, and the focus of the work I do is squarely on women, whether they're on their own or in a relationship. But I'm just curious, when you think of the work that you do, when you're working with women specifically, and maybe kind of zoom out and think bigger picture about, regardless of their age, like thinking down the road towards whether it's retirement or the rest of their lives or educating their kids or whatever the situation may be. What impact do you see in your coaching work as it relates to women specifically as they're kind of thinking about retirement or maybe retirement's down the road and they're just kind of thinking about their life, beyond divorce in this example?
Yeah, that's a great question again. Basically, for me, it's about having a plan and a strategy. And again, I hate to classify things, based on gender, but it seems to me from my experience that, women more than the men, they are not so quick to think about their post-divorce life and strategizing and their finances, and they're living in the moment more and they're concerned, if their children involved, rightfully so, with the children and getting through day-to-day drama maybe. And so, but the finances, like you said, and that you help with is so important. And if you have that plan and you have a strategy and you kind of know what your post-divorce life is going to look like or what you want it to look like, first you have to see if that's feasible. And then it's going to shape every decision you make, during the divorce. So, I think a lot of times people, say, all right, I just want to get divorced and then I will start my life, or, I'll figure out what's going on. When I think the approach is better if you say, what is my post-divorce life going to look like? And what can I do now to help point me in that direction? Because everything you do in divorce, regarding negotiations, what you want, what you're willing to give up, and what you want to focus on and not fight about versus things that you may want to fight about, that's all dependent on what your vision is for your life. And so if you have people like yourself to guide them and understand, all right, well, this is what you need to do now to get you where you want to be 10 years from now or longer, we got to start doing that now.
It's fascinating. Throughout our conversation today, I'm just fascinated by the parallels between what you do in your coaching work and what I do from a financial planning perspective. I mean, it's all about, getting a clarity around the vision of the life you want to live. And that can help make your decisions today much, much easier because you can be more deliberate, more purposeful with the decisions you're making because you're heading towards a destination or a goal versus just kind of letting inertia or just your routine or just taking things a day at a time and just kind of, getting carried by that wave. So I think that's a great approach. And I can only imagine how much your coaching clients benefit from that kind of framework as you're, coaching and giving them advice and direction. So yeah, I love that.
It's all about the big picture, and kind of, I take people out from the, I just came up with this. I swear to God, it's like a drone. I figure, if I'm a drone and then I'll take you with me on the drone and we'll, get up to that aerial view and look at the big picture of what's going on below. Because, a lot of times when you're down in the weeds of the divorce, you can't see, what's that phrase? They can't see the forest through the trees.
Yeah.
So what I try to do is I bring you up and get that aerial big picture view of what's going on. And that helps, clarify things.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine too, that kind of that aerial view also gives people a glimpse of what life could look like on the other side of this, when maybe they're just focused on how do I get through the next 24 or 48 hours, and then I'll deal with life beyond that when I get there. So
exactly.
Yeah, I got to think that's immensely helpful. So we're up on, we've been talking for 45 minutes or so, and I think we could probably easily talk for another hour without breaking a sweat. So we'll have to have you back on another episode down the road. But I always like to ask, just to give our listeners kind of a better picture of who you are outside of your professional life, how do you most enjoy spending your time when you've got maybe an hour or two to yourself? If you have an hour or two to yourself.
Right. That doesn't happen too often. And I only have one child, but so when I do have some time, one of my favorite hobbies is brewing beer. I've been doing it since college, since I turned 21, and a friend of mine kind of got into the craft together. And for people who don't know, it's just like baking or cooking. It's just you're brewing beer. And so I really enjoy it. And, I don't get to do it too often now because it is kind of time consuming. And, it can be an all day affair with, setting up the equipment, doing it, and then cleaning it up. But I love it. And, I guess I'm a little bit of a beer snob. And so I love the craft brews and everything. And that's one of my biggest hobbies. And then my other new hobby, which I'm happy. I don't think I've talked about it at all, Russ. So I'm going to debut it with you.
Breaking news.
Yes, this is very special. I started riding a motorcycle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's got to be kind of exciting, I would think. Are you in like a busy city in New Jersey, or are you kind of outside of the hustle and bustle?
Well, I feel like it's all hustle and bustle, but I'm in a suburb. I live in the suburbs, but it's congested, and so let me clarify. When I say ride a motorcycle, images I know pop into everybody's head depending on what you think when you hear that. I'm not doing this. I've always wanted to ride a motorcycle ever since I can remember. And I'm a Harley boy. And so I like the cruisers, and I'm not doing it for the speed. I'm not, you're not going to see me on one of those sport bikes. And I have no interest in going fast. I just want to be in the right lane going, 45 and have my legs up relaxing. And so I recently I just was able to start, and I found a nice used bike from somebody here in Jersey, and my wife, I gotta be 100% honest. Like, my wife was totally supportive, and she's just like, do it. It's now or never. And I got all the gear, and I do it as responsibly as I can. And so far, I love it. I gotta be honest.
That's awesome. You ever take your wife or your daughter with you?
Oh, no. That's not going to happen. No? Well, first, my wife has no interest. Right. And my daughter, until I get really proficient at it, I wouldn't even think about, putting her on the back. Although I do have a seat for a passenger, but I got to practice. It's like learning anything else. You got to practice to get good at it. And so I just started a couple of months ago. And so hopefully by next year, because it's getting a little chilly here now, in the springtime and the summer, I'll be raring to go.
That's awesome. I'm glad you shared that. Back to the beer thing real quick. Is there a favorite type of beer? Like, are you an IPA guy, or any specific like kind of beer that you especially enjoy brewing and or drinking, or do you just kind of mix it up and do a little bit of everything when you have the time?
I do a little bit of everything. I in the winter, in the colder months, I like the darker beers, like the stouts and the porters. And in the summer and the warmer weather, I like IPAs. And but an interesting thing, and I wonder how many people we've lost listening to this, but I with the IPAs, they're very hoppy, and that's what gives them the smell and the taste. As a home brewer, I've found it very challenging to brew the IPAs for some reason, and it all has to do with the water chemistry that you have at where you live, and it's actually quite complicated. Not complicated, but it's not. There's a lot that goes into brewing a good batch of beer, and so that's why I like it. Though every one is a new experience for me.
Yeah. Well, I've never done it, but I enjoy drinking it. Never tried brewing it, but it sounds fascinating, and I think we're probably picking up listeners at this point, because this is the good stuff.
Yeah, right. Maybe I should start a beer brewing podcast.
Yeah, maybe so. So listen, Jason, this has been great. I always enjoyed chatting with you, and we've covered a lot today. If there were one thing our listeners could take away from our conversation today, what would you want that one thing to be?
Understand that no matter how bad it may be right now, it can be better. And you have to take action, though, to make it better. It's not just going to happen by itself and thinking about it. It's about taking action and finding the right people to help you, and then you will see the results.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. So Jason, thank you again for joining us here on the podcast. We talked about your podcast earlier. What's the best way for people to learn more, to reach out, to get in touch if they're interested in doing so?
So you could find everything about me at my website, jasonlevoy.com. And, you could feel free to reach out to me. My email is jason@jasonlevoy.com. And I will get back to you right away. I promise.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, we'll include links to Jason's website and his podcast and everything in the show notes for this episode. So we'll make it easy for you to reach out if you'd like to, talk to Jason further. Again,
thank you so much, Russ, for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great. And to all you listeners out there, thanks for joining us for another episode of Women's Retirement Radio. And we look forward to catching up with you next time. It's Russ again. And before you go, I want to provide a brief disclosure. You should consult a financial advisor familiar with the specific circumstances of your unique financial situation before making any financial decisions. Nothing in this broadcast constitutes a solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities. Any mentioned rates of return are historical or hypothetical in nature and are not a guarantee of future returns. I'm a financial advisor and an investment advisor representative of WealthCare Capital Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor based in Richmond, Virginia. The views discussed in this podcast are my own and may not be consistent with or represent those of WealthCare Capital Management.